Right. Hi guys, I'm Waverly. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker for tonight, Ben Vandebunt. He was my professor last semester in a philanthropy and social impact class that he co-taught alongside his brilliant wife, Laura. Students worked in teams to evaluate 48 social enterprises in Los Angeles to allocate $60,000 in grants to the 3 enterprises we believed had the best growth opportunities, strongest management, and most meaningful impact. Students were also able to engage with incredible speakers, which were often close friends of Ben and Laura's, including Steve Ballmer. Ben has a remarkable talent to not only meet amazing people, but reveal the unique fundamental features that make these people special and successful. Ben was the student body president at UCLA before attending Harvard Law School. He is the founder and chairman of Cypress Creek Renewables, a solar farm developer that works to deliver clean energy to as many community members as possible because they believe solar makes the world cleaner and safer. Previously, Ben was the president and co-owner of Guffey Ranker, which introduced us to Tony Robbins, Cindy Crawford, and Proactive Skincare. From personal experience, Ben is an exceptional, successful, generous individual that constantly shares meaningful wisdom and advice. I'm thrilled that he is here to talk more about his background and philosophies and that you all have the opportunity to engage with him. Please welcome Ben Vandebunt.
No, I'm on.
Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Hey, everybody.
Pretty good introduction, don't you think?
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Waverly. I was a little worried about following Kobe Bryant, but that was.
It's not an easy one to follow. Let's start with that class. So as you heard, this never gets old. Not only did Ben go to UCLA, he's the student body president at UCLA, and he's more active at USC. So it's really good to have him here. It's never too late. Never too late. We're happy to co-opt any successful people from UCLA and have them over here. Let's talk about that class, the vision for that class, because this was a class that was never offered before. What did you and Laura sort of have in mind when you brought it to us?
My wife is a lot smarter than I am, and she was teaching a class at UCLA, called Philanthropy. And I've become pretty good friends with Jim Ellis and a few other people here at SC, and was telling them about the class, talking about Marshall, and we thought maybe we could convert the class from figuring out how to give money and teach students how to be philanthropists, which I think is a great goal for all of you. All of you should be philanthropists. But I thought maybe you'd be a little interested in the becoming really rich so you could become a philanthropist and maybe incorporate that a little bit in the class. And so the idea was to give money to 3 charities, nonprofits, and in the process have students learn about the different kind of management teams in place that makes an organization succeed, the different business models they have, whether they have a good margin, whether they're sustainable, what does their balance sheet look like, are they going to go bankrupt? And so through the process of giving money away to nonprofits, we thought we could teach some fundamentals of entrepreneurship.
And all these organizations that they evaluated they weren't nonprofits. They were mission-based, for-profit, or at least with a sustainable business model. Is this on? Hello. There you go. Sorry, my bad. They were all mission-based businesses with real business models. And you went from how many? 48?
So we broke the class into 3 groups. Waverly and I think I saw a few others here in the class. And so they would break down the 48 ultimately to 3. The idea was that they couldn't give the same amount of money to each 3, and that you had to kind of vote for what was best for the organizations and the class as a team. So we tried to, ultimately they started as sort of like management teams, and then we tried to help them break the biases that you always get when you're in a small organization or a large organization, which is that I like what we invented the most. And so the class ultimately had to figure out how to divvy up the money in unequal amounts to organizations that they may not have chosen. So I thought it was a fun class. I think hopefully the students learned a lot. You guys are a lot smarter now at SC than you were when I went to UCLA.
That's so what did you take away from the class, honestly? Like there's obviously no such thing as part-time professor. You learn that because students want to be with their professors and ask questions. It's not an easy thing to do to teach class.
Yeah, when I work with Tony Robbins, he used to always say things like, people really enjoy advice and input, but they really would like a strong, warm lead as well. And so I think what I took away from the class is I really enjoyed teaching and having my wife teach macro principles to entrepreneurial students, I would say the majority of the students also wanted help getting a job, meeting people, doing things. And I enjoyed that interaction. It was a very interactive class.
Well, you couldn't know anyone better, not in just Los Angeles, but sort of anywhere, if you've got Ben on your side. So Ben mentions his wife Laura Fox, who is smarter than he is, if that's possible. So I met Ben through Laura. I won't say how many years ago, because it's actually stunning when we think about it. We count the years. But she was my first supervisor when I was a lawyer at Latham & Watkins. I did this terrible tax project. She even told me, this is really boring. But I met, and then I started doing real estate and land use work, which is like political, like, how do you get votes to build the Staples Center, and how do you build a golf course in downtown? And Ben was doing similar work at another real estate firm downtown. And from the moment I met him, he was hustling, and hustling in a good way, just like, yeah, I want to make some more money than this. So we're going to get to you being a lawyer, but why weren't you destined to be a lawyer long term?
So one of the other things I also took away from the class is providing a perspective as a 55-year-old guy is not really valuable to people who are closer to 20. So I think the perspective I had was when I went to UCLA, I had met Bill Clinton, who had just become a governor in Arkansas, and I was enthralled by this idea that he had back then of this third way. And really interesting. I said, I really want to get involved in politics. So I decided to try to become student body president and go to Harvard Law School and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And I got elected, and there's no job I hated more in my life. I couldn't stand it. And so, I had a plan, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm going to Harvard Law School and the Kennedy School of Government. I got to pay for myself. I don't want to go into politics, and I've really never met a lawyer. And so the first time I ever really met a lawyer was when I walked into a law firm, and I remember looking around, probably 23 years old, in my first or second year of law school, going, man, there's nobody here I want to be. This sucks. I mean, there was just no energy, no joy. It was like just sterile. And so I think I went over to your law firm, and it was worse, and so I was pretty clear that I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. And that's just something, by the way, I have a company now. We have about 450, almost 500 millennials. And some of you might have this, many don't. But man, I can't tell you how many people that I meet in their 20s are saying, I can't believe I don't know what I want to do. And I would just say, man, if you have a really good idea of what you want to do, you're probably lying to yourself, right? You just don't know enough. I mean, the world is so big, And so I had this idea that, man, I'm going to be in politics. I got a 3-part program to save the world. And first, I sucked at it. And 2, I didn't enjoy it. And then, I became a lawyer. So, so the hustling was just, I knew I didn't want to be where I was. And if I just sat there and felt sorry for myself, it wasn't going to change it.
And like I said, from the day that we met, you always had, I'll say a side hustle, but something going on, or a project of some type of how it could make money. And as you can tell, once Ben has an idea, he can convince you to get on board pretty easily. He's just like, I'll follow you. What are you doing? So tell us how you found a project or an opportunity, but it wasn't a business, but you made a bunch of money really quickly.
So I'm a lawyer. I think about $90,000 in debt. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I think lawyers back then, I think you were at a better law firm, so you were getting paid more, but I think I was making $38,000 a year.
Come on, you weren't making
Didn't
that.
seem like I was going to ever repay it. And so I was constantly looking for things to do. So I went out and tried to sell some homes to people. I was lousy at that. I did some of the door knocking sales to say, I didn't enjoy that process. And then one night I was researching a case, in my job as being a lawyer, and I saw that the city of LA had lost a lawsuit saying that they were charging 1% to every developer for their building permit. And this is before the internet, and so I was like, I wonder what happens when a judge in a robe makes a ruling. How do they enforce that? And so I went down to City Hall, and I realized they didn't. And they just said, hey, if anyone asks for a refund within 1 year, we'll give them their money back. So I developed a business where I would call people and they'd say, what is it? I go, it's so easy to get, I can't tell you. And so a couple of them would say, well, I'll go try, and they never figured it out. And so I made 10x, 15x more money processing refunds. I paid off my debts. I was able to get married, buy an engagement ring, not enough to buy a house, but it was really awesome. And I was like, man, I'm working 2,300 hours a year in a sterile law firm, miserable, and I'm working like 2 hours a week making 10x. As a career choice, it seemed really easy. But what Dave was getting at is the city got so sick of me, they ended up changing the rules. So I didn't have a business, I had an opportunity. And I think at your age, pursuing opportunities isn't such a bad thing. You know, if you can make some money on the side, arbitrage and inefficiency, just do something, I think you can learn a lot, keep your overhead low. But it was really awesome, and it just got me obsessed with, wow, this entrepreneurship is real. I mean, I didn't even think I knew the word then, because it wasn't, now it's kind of in vogue. But I was like, man, I got to do this, because this sucks. And so that was the motivating force.
Yeah, back when we were in school, if you said you were an entrepreneur or you're studying entrepreneurship, it means you didn't have a job.
Right.
Or you haven't figured it out yet. Now, everybody wants to be in a startup, so it's cool to be an entrepreneur. So it's so interesting, because when I think of you, I think of the brands that you've helped build and the businesses that you've built, and that's not an easy transition to go from lawyer to consumer products. So tell us about sort of the next step. I remember getting a call where you're just like, I got to get out of here. I was working at I was still a lawyer at Latham & Watkins, but I had an office at a place called American Golf, which operated like 300 golf courses, and we bought golf courses. And he's like, I want that job. I'm a good golfer and I'm a deal maker. And I actually said, no, this is a family-run company, and there are already 3 son-in-laws lined up, and you'd be behind them. And so tell us the next thing you saw, and what you do recognize opportunity and have a unique ability to translate that into something that's tangible.
So here's another thing. Old people, when they're telling stories, make it seem like they were clairvoyant. That job that he told me he sucked, I interviewed for and didn't get. So he told me it sucked. It was a family-owned business. I shouldn't pursue it. But my theory is pursue everything to acquire as many free options as you can get in life. At some point, you got to make a decision, and that's when you got to worry. But I meet a lot of people who are making decisions about the things they're going to do and not going to do before they have the opportunity, and that might be a little premature. So I was pursuing a lot of stuff. One of the things that I spent a lot of time doing back then was noticing that, I don't know why, but like if you go to like a county fair and you see people like with mops and knives and they're selling a lot of stuff to people, it always just blew me away that you could go with your family to the county fair, and next thing you know, you come home with a set of steak knives. And so these salespeople just blew me away at how smart and clever they were. And so at the same time, TV used to have about 12 hours of dead time at the middle of the night. After 1 in the morning, it would go or play the American, national anthem and music. And so I was just really fascinated by the fact that if you could get your best salespeople on TV, instead of selling to 20 people, you could sell to 2,000. And so I was just independently just looking for things to do, and I thought, wow, this TV thing could be big. And separately, I was interested in that. And so I pursued a couple guys named Guffey Ranker who had just started a business a couple years earlier and had a success with a guy named Tony Robbins. And so I connected with them, and that's how I ended up working there.
A couple things I want to point out. One is a lesson that you just alluded to, but you said it to me actually after a meeting, and it's not the most artful thing, but for some reason it stuck to me, and this is great advice for you. And it's not very often at my age that I have someone in the room that actually can give me advice. He was in the room. We were negotiating a deal with Hallmark for a digital greetings company that I had and been invested in. And we invited him there because he had all this brand expertise and sort of a big hitter in town. And he takes me after. He says, "It looks like you would rather do push-ups in glass than do a deal with these guys." Yeah, and he says, they were come up with obstacles as why this wouldn't work, and I was adding to them in the meeting. I might be saying, yeah, but this, yeah, but that. He's like, don't edit while seeking. Don't edit your options while you're pursuing a deal. It's the best thing that's ever come into your life, and you pursue it until it isn't, right? Until it's not an option, and then you're like, yeah, it didn't work for me, or I took another road. But this is such great advice, because in life, you'll pursue 5 things that will go to 3, that'll go to 2, that maybe will go to 1. So you have to have multiple options sort of going at the same time.
Professor Belasco, I want to take your class. It's really exciting. I came last week, that'd be awesome. Or, I got 4 options. You seem okay. I'm going to check you out today, and if you don't suck, I might sign up. Screw you. He's going to take the enthusiastic person. I interview people all the time who look at me like, I got options. I'm like, great, so do I. So all I'm saying is like, you don't know what you want. Get as many good things as in front of you, and then you choose. But instead, I see all this compulsive reenactment, and people are deciding while they're pursuing. And it's, first of all, I don't know if it's psychologists, but performance experts, who Dave is one, will tell you your performance will decrease. If you spend your time, shoot, I'm sure Kobe, Bryant isn't saying right elbow in, hand up. This is a special moment. Shoot, it's. Everything's got to be instinctual. Like so when you're in that meeting, it's got to be, I'm connecting with another human being. I want you, man. I want to work with you. I think we're going to really do something awesome. And then I give you an offer, and you say, yeah, sorry, I'm working for SpaceX. I got a bunch of lava buddies that are way more impressive than you. I'm going with them. That wouldn't insult me. I want you to pursue what's best for you. But I wouldn't give you the offer if you didn't make me feel a certain way. I think it's really important. I think a lot of I'm a little unimpressed in general at how well people, not true at USC because you guys are all high EQ, smart, brilliant people, but out there in the rest of the world, you'd be surprised at how little effort people make to make that connection to get that opportunity, even if they don't want it. It's kind of nuts.
It's true, and as a good example, how do people feel when they leave your presence? How do people feel when they leave a meeting? You can imagine a meeting with him. You're usually leaving on a high. We can do stuff. Nothing's going to stand in our way. And so you want to give people that vibe, and you want to be prepared. And I'm not saying everyone has to be an extrovert and high energy, but you sort of have to give people that feeling. Another lesson I want you to touch on is, everyone thinks that, I apply for a job, I get a job. Here's a guy, he wasn't making 30-something thousand, it wasn't that long ago, but who's leaving this firm, who gets a steady paycheck, he's on a path to be a partner. Ben's going to be a partner anywhere he goes. But how long, what was your approach with Guffey and Ranker? And by the way, they were in Palm Desert. Ben lived in Santa Monica by the West Side Pavilion, I think maybe at the time. And how often did you drive out there, and then sort of give us the proposition for them?
I think Dave is describing why people who were entrepreneurial back then were a little more desperate. So I went to Guffey and Ranker. They seemed like really together guys. And I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll work for you for free for 1 year. But at the end of the year, you're either going to get rid of me or I'm your partner. And I could tell they're kind of greedy. And so they took that deal, and I always joke around, and 5 years later I became their partner. But I was really committed. It was 140 miles away from our house, and I drove every day. I went in the morning. And by the way, cell phone reception sucks, so it was only like the first 20 minutes you had a cell phone. But I'd leave it early and then come back later. I was really into it. But like if you find something that you think you're uniquely capable of doing, and like, man, selling stuff on TV, and we had Tony Robbins, and we were just starting to click. I was like, man, we can really turn this into something, and if I can become a partner of that, I wasn't going to say, well, it's kind of inconvenient. It was something viscerally in me that made me feel like these guys were special, the opportunity was special, and therefore I should do something stupid.
And for those of you who don't know, that's obviously a long time ago for you guys. You guys were just being born. But Guffey Ranker was the leading direct marketing company, and I guess they'd call it infomercials. They pioneered the space, which was at that point Wild West, some pretty suspicious characters in that business. And Guffey Ranker was sort of the lead and legitimate, but they were small when you came on board. Give us an example of some of the products that you helped spearhead and how the growth went over time.
So back in the day when people actually watched TV, this was a neat, cool business. So first we had this guy, Tony Robbins, that was a testimonial on our first product called Think and Grow Rich. And people liked him more than they liked the product, so we then did something around him. And I don't know, is Nana White still around? So we did a tooth whitener with her. That was fun. And then we realized that an acne treatment would be great. So we were looking for doctors, dermatologists. So we found Katie Rodan and Kathy Fields. They had a dermatological practice. And we created Proactive. And then Cindy Crawford was working with Revlon. And so we kept saying to her, these people are mean. She'd go, what do you mean? I'm the Revlon woman. I'm awesome. You are awesome, but they're going to dump you. They always do. When a woman turns 40, they don't want you. At 40, you can sell a lot of skincare to women over 40. So whenever you're ready to leave Revlon, come our way. So we started a business with her called Meaningful Beauty. our chief fitness spokesperson was at the time named Bruce Jenner, and his wife, Kris Jenner, who was really, really smart, little Kardashians running around. That was all during the OJ murder trial, so that was interesting. But we were able to get a lot of, take a product and create a national audience. And so we went from, when I joined, like about $8 or $10 million a year to being in 65 countries, and at our peak, we got to about $2 billion a year in sales.
From 10, 20 million to 2 billion, and the reach. I mean, what did you guys do uniquely well? I mean, again, nowadays with Google Analytics, you can probably get as much information as anything, but you guys were the experts at call centers and keeping people on and getting people to press buy, subscribe, not unsubscribe, not stop. What made that place?
Well, so there's a lot of things, but there's a lot of techniques that work when you sell. If you order now, we'll give you 2 free gifts. If you put something, if you create a commercial where it's light and flowers in the background, you'll get a 35% lift than if it's dark in the background. If you create some sense of urgency, you'll create 10 or 15% lift. If you create a celebrity, you hire a celebrity to stand next to your product, you'll create a tremendous amount of lift, not because the celebrity will sell, but because people will stop the channel. So when we got P. Diddy, people are like, what is he doing on TV with that? I remember he was saying, like, yeah, as a guy, I don't call up my buddies and say, hey, what are you moisturizing with? But I use Proactive. And so, through him and, Jessica Simpson and Justin Bieber, we're able to get people to stop, and then we could sell. And that worked incredibly well until you guys came of age and stopped watching TV. It totally screwed my career, and we had to find a different way to sell.
So that, you have a talent for seeing what's coming. You think you look ahead. A lot of people are so in their business or in their career, in their life, that they're not on it and they're not looking ahead. And you think about that. I've watched people go down with the ship because they're just so into like delivering the next order or the next season, and you could see what was coming. Even though you're at the top of this business, he's the president of the company, he's one of the 4 owners. A couple times I remember you came into class and you're like, I think it's time for me to go. It took like 1 or 2. What was it that made you realize this is time for me to go on to something new?
Well, first of all, people weren't watching so much TV. And so when your entire business, or 95% of your business is, let's run a TV ad, hope that people watch the commercials, and when people are fast forwarding through commercials and, DVRs and things, you're going to get a clue that things are not going well. And so at the time, Justin Bieber, I remember I was looking at all this data on Justin Bieber, and our average age for Proactive was a little older, and we said, we should hire Justin Bieber. I think there's obviously a larger customer base that's younger, their credit sucks compared to the older people, but I think we'll get a bigger audience, we can make some money. But the overriding thing I kept seeing was that young people looked at clean energy and renewable energy as a value. And so as a marketer, you're just looking for clues. And when you see that 95% of that audience, not only, a certain amount, I think like 92% knew Justin Bieber, not everyone liked him, he was a little controversial, but there were a lot of character traits, and one of the overriding character traits was this idea that your generation was going to be green. And so as a marketer, I'm just sitting there going, wow, I can either sell products on TV and no one, and fewer people are watching TV every day, or I can just learn more about clean energy and renewable energy. So I just started taking some of my free time and going to solar conferences and just started devouring information on renewable energy and clean energy, just because you just had a sense it was coming. I didn't know whether it would scale, whether I could make money, but it was just fascinating to me that this group of people who are going to take over the buying power of the world have this really strong, overwhelming need and desire, and I wanted to make sure I could add value to it.
And there were a couple things that happened while you were at Guffey Ranker. You made an acquisition with your partners. I mean,
Right.
they were making, the company was very profitable, so they had money to invest as partnership. And you made an initial investment. Tell us about that investment and what happened to it. And then I also want to sort of pivot. Well, let me ask you this first, because you said, I started studying solar. I remember at one point you asked a friend or a friend's wife the question, because for a long time, people looked at solar panels just like, yeah, I don't want them on my roof. I don't care. I don't, they're ugly and everything. And so as a marketer, you're like, maybe it's not time. What gave you the indication that, like, release the hounds, it's time?
Well, so I did a bunch of stuff. I'd go to solar conferences and I would meet a bunch of German engineers, and I would say what any marketer would say, hey, why should I buy your solar panels? And it was all because mine are straighter. I was like, I don't give a shit if my solar panels are straight, but I mean, and everyone kept giving me the same answer. They all had roughly the same technology. And so I kept asking questions. So I'd go to conferences, you ask people, and I think Albert Einstein said, if you have an hour to solve a problem, spend 50 minutes trying to figure out how to ask the best question. And somehow down the line, I just asked a really good question. I don't remember thinking about it, but I went to a few different architects who were designing really rich people's homes. And my theory was, if really rich people like stuff and all of you like stuff, and those two converge like in a Venn diagram, I want to be where that convergence is. And so I kept asking them, I said, tell me when your really rich clients want solar on the roof. And the first 3 or 4 years I asked that question, everyone said never. Those panels are really ugly, the designer will never allow it, they'll never allow it, never, never, never. And then literally 3 or 3.5 years into asking that question of 2 different architects, they both said, you're not going to believe it. Every one of my houses that are over $10 million, they want solar on the roof. But more than that, they want me to design the roof so people can see the solar panels. So you think about it, it's like to me it's like the Prius moment, right? It's a shitty car, but I'm a superior human being to you. So all of a sudden, man, I want to be that guy, right? So I immediately went out and did 2 things. I started I financed a startup solar company in North Carolina where the regulatory regime was good, and bought a tiny mortgage company that I thought we could build a solar adjunct to in California with the grand plan of utilities, huge, big miles and miles of solar, and the California's residential rooftop. And the plan was, okay, I'm going to buy this as a base, I'm going to start this, and I'm going to put the 2 together. By the way, it never happened. Both of them did well, but it never came together.
So tell us about Paramount Equity, Paramount Solar. How much of and this is while you were at Guffey Ranker.
Yeah, so I'm now the CEO. So what happened to Guffey Ranker when things got really lousy, and you'll see this a lot, like when Steve Ballmer came and spoke, Bill Gates was the founder and CEO. When things, he's like, he got really rich, he wants to be really involved, but being a CEO can be a real pain. I mean, when you're young and you guys levels of energy, it's good, but it's kind of exhausting. And so when things started getting rough at Guffey and Ranker go, all right, congratulations, we just made you the CEO. Well, okay, do I get a raise, a new office? No, nothing's different. You're just now the CEO. And it did change things, made me feel a little more responsible. I said, great, I'm going to go green. And they're like, you're out of your mind. So I'm CEO. I mean, there's got to be some power here. So we invested $12 million into this mortgage company called Paramount Equity. And the whole idea was that I wanted to sort of convert it into, one, I thought I could improve the mortgage company, and 2, I thought I could create this clean energy, adjunct to it. You can call Paramount Solar.
And so shortly after you let, and I don't remember if you bought them out or whether you sold Paramount Solar. To whom did you sell it? And
right.
if you don't mind, it was reported.
So what happened was Guffey and Ranker did not like. We're a skincare business. We sell Proactive. We have Cindy Crawford. What are you doing? I said, I'm CEO. But they kept bickering. I said, look, I'll buy you out. And so and these guys are pretty entrepreneurial. They go, okay, but only 80%. So I bought them out, and then that was a lot. I mean, it's still a lot of money, but it was a lot of money for me at the time. And I really wanted to be sure that wasn't a stupid investment. And so I might have spent more time on it than was appropriate for a CEO. But we ended up selling it a year and a half later to Elon Musk and Solar City for, a lot, like $130 million. That was a great transaction. And so I joined Elon's board and Solar City, and that was awesome because then you get to spend time with someone who, as you guys know, is truly brilliant. I mean, that's when, talk about feeling insecure. I don't know if any of you ever feel insecure about how smart you are. I always do. And all of a sudden you're around somebody who confirmed, nope, you're right, you are an idiot. This guy, wow. I mean, it was like beyond brilliant. And that was fun. And the idea was these guys had a great product, but they sucked at marketing. They were a bunch of engineers and designers. And so what we did is we had call centers, hello, Proactive. And so we just gave every one of our Proactive reps a Google Earth map And so before a sales crew went out to a house and realized that 92% of all homes don't qualify for solar, we would look at their house and not send a crew to 92% of the people. And so it looked like, even though we were probably doing just as well as everybody else, we looked smarter because we broke down our sales list to the 8% of the people who were qualified, not the 92. So we built that up, and Solar City wanted it and had to have it. So that was really cool. So they then owned, they owned that whole team is now part of Tesla. But it's all, they merged with Tesla.
So tell us about your entry into Cypress Creek Renewables and the business model for what you saw as the opportunity.
So now I'm 50 years old. I've sold this business. Guffey Ranker are not happy that they only got 20% of a deal that they never participated in. I decide I'm 50. It's time to try to do something else. And so I just sat down with a sheet of paper and a pencil and just got some office space and realized, I kind of understand this renewable area. I didn't really want to do residential. I'd started this business on the East Coast with my a partner who was getting a little bit, part of the nut taping. He got rich. He left his, I think he thought he was too good looking for his wife, although he weighs over 300 pounds. I mean, just a difficult guy. And so I just said, this is not what I want out of life, but I want this kind of business. And so he wanted to separate. So I said, hey, why don't you take that company? I'll start over. And so I just basically took an all-star crew of people who I had worked with at Paramount, City, and places. And we decided to come up and create Cypress Creek. And the idea there is that there's many states, yeah, there you go. There's many states in the United States that want clean energy. Not all of them, but there's about 15. And so the insight that we had was that the state said, hey, we don't want 100% of our energy to come from coal. We want 90% and 10% to come from clean stuff. And so what I did is I started optioning up all the land I could along the grid, with the idea being that's the cheapest, crappiest land, right? So it's cheap, and I'm optioning it, so I'm only paying for $1,000. But then if I built a solar farm there, I only have a 1-foot extension cord to the utility. So if you build a solar farm in the Mojave Desert, you generate a lot of energy, but it's really expensive to run a 90-mile extension cord to the nearest outlet. So by buying the cheapest land and having the shortest extension cord, if I did everything equal to my competitors, I'd be cheaper. And since they had to buy a certain amount of energy, and because I was cheaper, they should buy from me. So that was sort of the premise of the business. We started that in North Carolina 4 years ago, this last March, and it's gotten big. We've raised almost $4 billion, got about 600 employees. I think we now have built 5% of all of the solar that's in the United States. So it's going to be about almost 2.5 gigawatts.
And I saw last year you built, or was it last year or the year before? Last year you built the largest single solar farm
in the, yeah, so it was about, very big.
And where was that? Was that in North Carolina?
No, that's South Carolina.
Okay.
And we sold that to Southern. So, but it's a really interesting business. And so my point is that like the stuff you do here, you kind of learn and you apply it here, and then you got a plan, and then you realize your plan sucks. So you go here, and it's just sort of like, but as long as you're picking stuff up along the way, you can kind of keep growing.
But you touched on something that's like, you wanted to have the shortest connection to the utility. Like, what do you look for in besides a large market and an emerging trend that that's pointed towards green? What do you look for in businesses that you dive into or invest in?
Yeah, so Waverly is going to go work at Goldman Sachs. I think that's awesome to get training and all that. But man, it's hard to compete with people they're really smart. I want no part of that competition because they're going to beat me. So what I'm always looking for are unfair competitive advantages. So if I can find, it's hard, I don't know if it's harder now or not, but if I can find something that other people aren't doing, that I find really attractive. So I'm willing to go like in the infomercial business. When I started in the infomercial business, if you weren't wearing 2 pinky rings, you really weren't slimy enough to be in the industry. So I like that because I felt that reduced the competition, and that by being honest and smart and clever, I'd have a better chance to succeed. So I'm always looking for why is it that if I participate, I have a good chance to succeed. It might be because you're smarter than other people. I didn't have that. It might be that you're willing to work harder than other people. That's not a bad one, but it's hard to sustain. So if you can find some problem that you can solve, either because you're first or because you have something proprietary, and it's in an area where appears to be an ongoing need, I think you can, I think you can really, I personally find that's the sweet spot for me as an entrepreneur. I mean, obviously other people, you're going to, Kobe Bryant, well, I'm just the best basketball player in the world. Or Mark Merrill, I created the greatest video company in the world. I mean, you're going to meet some amazing people who went at it very differently than I did. I mean, but, for me, that was really the way I went at it.
And so you're pretty, I don't say diversified, but you're in a lot of different solar companies now. And
Yeah.
we're going to let them ask questions about Cypress Creek as well. What are some of the other solar companies that you've started, and how are they different, and sort of how do they have competitive advantages?
Right. So once you have a competitive advantage, I think it's really good to sort of build on it. So another company, so I won't get into a lot of the details, but another company I have that I've invested a lot in is a wind energy company. And so Cypress operates in states where the utilities are like monopolies. And there's a lot of states, 20 states where the utilities aren't monopolies. And so we created a company called Inspire Energy. And so there we go to people and we say, hey, I'm trying to think of what's up there. Oh, yeah, there you go. And so the idea is that if you own a 1,500 square foot home, you're burning 6 tons of coal a year to create electricity. That kind of makes you a dick if you can get wind energy from Inspire for the same price, right? So, I mean, don't be a jerk. Take clean energy for the same price. And so we started Inspire Energy, and the whole idea that we have about 100,000 customers, and the whole idea there is once we can become your utility, I'm then going to convert your utility bill into like a phone bill, because one reason people hate their utility bills, they never know what it's going to be, because your utility doesn't know what it's going to be, because the utility's buying energy for you over the next month. So if you use X units and their cost is $10, it's a $100 utility bill. Well, I kind of know what your bill is going to be over the next month, so we've hired a lot of smart Enron, hedging, the lawful side. And so I'm going to give you a fixed energy bill, so every month it's like a phone bill. So if you use it, it's going to charge you $99 a month or $89 a month. And then we want to really take now that we're in your house, we want to, basically, smart home as a service. We want to control your thermostat, help you save money, find other ways to be clean. That business is really growing. So it's really interesting. It's kind of related. And then, I'm doing some stuff in like water desalination and some other things, but they're all sort of related, where I'm taking the competitive advantage I have of having this infrastructure in place that allows me to sort of congruently create other businesses that, help move quick.
Do people? We'll talk about the water plant in a second. Do people bring you? Are you in all these different solar deals because people came to you, or because there were offshoots of your business, or you found really sharp people around you and said, "Let's go do this together"?
I think it's all of them. I think I don't know if any of you guys have done your Myers-Briggs. I hadn't done it until I was in my 50s. But for me, I think the skill that I have is that I understand that all of you have a superpower. We all have a superpower. And my goal is, if I see somebody who has this amazing skill, even if they don't see it, I'm willing to bet on them. And my business model is the same. I will put up all the money on the condition that you're in charge, that you have the majority of the equity, and that I never have to read anything you ever give me unless you ask me, and I'll sign anything blindly. And so to me, like if I can create relationships that are almost spousal with love and respect, my partner can spend 100% of their time beating the market. I've eliminated all the friction, all the raising money, all the nuttiness. And so for me, it's an idea that I might have combined with seeing somebody who I think is extraordinary, and then having them kind of come together. So it's usually 2 or 3 dots that are disconnected that somehow come together.
It's interesting because you reminded me of something, and brings back good memories, and not, and so when you invested in my digital company, and Ben's an active investor, but the way that you did it taught me a lesson, because we had a young team, some USC people and friends, and we were putting together a video company, a video card company. So instead of going to Hallmark or American Greetings, you could send a clip instantly from an app, a clip from your favorite movie or television show that's automatic, that's already edited for every occasion, not just anniversary and weddings, but you got drunk last night, let's go to Vegas, great date, all these things through movies. And it was the first time these movies we were on fire, great, but we're raising some money. And I remember asking you, and it was like an afterthought for him saying yes, but the way that you said yes taught me a lesson of how to do this with people. Because you think about it, in a startup, it's a binary result. It either wins big or you lose everything, right? And it wasn't a huge amount of money to him, but it was a big amount of money. It was. No, I'm saying, but generally it's all. And he said, let me earn the opportunity to be on your board. You know, I mean, when you're asking for money and someone responds that way, let me prove that I can help you. And then he proceeds to say, I'll die on the hill working for this, and made all these introductions and put the money in, and you know, and sadly I didn't return it this time. You know, it was like one of those things that like it kills me to this day. I did lose 3 times what everyone else lost, but it just kills me that like my friends invested in us, so we couldn't make it happen yet. But just the way that you said that, and it's true. Like if you're going to give somebody $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, whatever it may be, and it was more than that. Do you want to nag the person? Do you want to make them feel like crap or like really haunt them, or do you want to inspire them to go do great things?
Yeah, no, I mean, think about it. You guys are entrepreneurs. You're taking a risk. You're going to do something that's likely to fail. The last thing you need to do is take shit on the way to the starting line, right? I mean, what you need is support. You need help. And so, like, if you're going to be in, again, I know Tony Robbins is old, you know, but he's sort of my generation sort of guru. I just think he had so much good advice. Like, you know, if you got 2 choices, you're either going to be in and positive, or you're going to be out. Okay, but if you're in, you know, I mean, I don't know, it just seems so basic.
It does,
but most people don't do that.
Don't lose my money. I think a lot of successful people know that, but they, you know, no one ever teaches you that, how to give somebody the message as you're giving them the money.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. Mike Singer did that as well when he did it. It's just like, you know, how could I not be in this? You know, when someone says that to you, how could I not be included? I'd be sick if I wasn't in this. So like those types of things really inspire you to work.
No, that's great.
That's a great lesson. So back to, I want to talk about one other business, because like I said, you're seeing someone who you think, oh, he's an energy entrepreneur, he's a solar entrepreneur. He's just an entrepreneur. I mean, this guy looks for opportunity, can brand it, sell it. Talk about, is it Nested?
Oh yeah. So my dad at 90, so sad, but he died last year. And over the course of a year, it's just, I mean, you guys are 100 years away from this issue for yourselves, but it's just lousy. And so I was kind of surprised at how bad the alternatives were for senior care as my dad was going through it. And so, I got to spend a lot of time at the hospital, sitting around thinking, and then I kind of realized, wow, the housing, the care for seniors is really lousy, but I'm not sure I really want them as clients, because they're all going to pass away soon. And so what I made the connection with is a lot of people my age, when we were having kids, autism was really on the rise. And so it just led for me to go out to meet with a lot of caregivers with young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's called IDD. And so I just thought, well, that's interesting. You've got lousy care for people who are seniors. I wonder what the housing situation is for people who are 25, 30, 35. And what I learned over the course of time was that there's a lot of young adults who are living at home. The parents don't really want them living at home anymore. They don't want to live at home anymore. They want to be a little bit more independent. And that there's a real housing need. So I started buying homes for young adults in groups of 3 and 4. And we call it nested, because we want to nest them, IDD. And so I do the deal with their caregiver. And so the caregivers are happy, because if they have 100 kids or 100 young adults, if I can buy 33, 35 homes in a geographic proximate area, they can provide their care in a much more efficient way. These young adults now get to move out of the house. I get to buy a home with a tenant who's going to live there for a long time. So as a landlord, I build a ramp, I make sure I provide great service, I get a great tenant. Obviously we have to provide great service, but I think it's a real money-making opportunity. And so my nephew, who had done really well in real estate, wanted me to invest with him, and said, nah, the world doesn't need another real estate developer. Why don't we do something that makes the world a little better while you get rich? And so we now have a fund, and we are developing and buying lots of single-family homes, and our tenants are caregivers, and we've got hundreds of young, and we'd like to buy tons of them. We'd like to buy as many as we can. And by the way, we've got a competitive advantage. These young adults don't want to move. Well, you guys will probably move a lot in your first few years. These young adults would like to stay there they want to sign a 10-year lease. Normally when you're a landlord, you're lucky to get a 3-month or 6-month lease. Well, I'm getting 10-year leases. So I'm getting a great economic return for providing something there's an enormous hole in the market in. And I've got some really smart young people who otherwise would be working with Waverly at Goldman Sachs out there doing some really entrepreneurial, real estate projects.
I mean, you think about the common denominator in all these businesses, right? They are good for the world.
Yeah.
Whether it's energy or this, there's another one we'll talk about, and they make money. So to do good and do well is, I think, what most people aspire to do. And you just have this unique ability to see the good in businesses, and to, Mark Benioff, one of our graduates, says, business is one of the greatest, business can be one of the greatest forces of good in the world.
Absolutely.
The private enterprise. And so, in sort of today's world where you sort of see a lot of the opposite, when it's privately held, it's not public, he doesn't owe, shareholders, he doesn't owe, a public company type of reporting. You do good, you make money, and you probably could make more money, but you don't have to sort of push it to the limit. I do want to talk about success and failure, because we can line up people forever to come in here and tell you all the great successes, and there's certainly a lot of people coming here, but we need to talk about failure, because I remember you sent me an email a while back. And does anybody, everyone puts their resume together. What's the resume? A resume is a fiction of all the great things you've done in your life, right? Has no mention of the things that you haven't done. And we shared sort of some of our failures. Maybe it was like a failure journal. Remember that?
Great, yeah. God, that was funny.
And so what is the importance, so how do you define success? How do you define failure, and what's the value of each?
Yeah, that's so good. Well, I think as it relates to you guys, I mean, if you're in college, if you don't get the dorm you want, the fraternity you want, the club you want, the grade you want, it just feels so shitty at the time, but it's such a great learning experience. Now that I'm a parent, it's so funny because as a parent, you don't want your kids to face any harm, but when you step back, you realize all the negative things they face that they overcome is where all the growth comes from. But that's right, our resume, I think it was sort of like I joined a fraternity tried to join a fraternity, got shut down. I remember asking these two women out on dates, they shut me down. And I went to this business, got fired. Yeah, it was just like, it was awesome. And, but
look at the body language, it was awesome.
But that's so real, right? I mean, he's going to bring up Kobe Bryant and Cindy Crawford, and you're going to sit here and see this all-star of human fantasy, But I mean, at the end of the day, that's just not at all the way it works, right? And so I guess the way I would define success is your willingness to just keep at it. I was talking to Cindy Crawford yesterday. Her husband created Casamigos. I mean, what a win. Right? Made it, I think they sold it for $1 billion, right? With George Clooney, a couple people. I go, what are you guys doing now? She goes, it's so funny. We're trying to figure out what's next. So if you think about, you guys are going to live to be 120, you got to keep finding stuff you like to do. So you build a business, you sell it, awesome. What are you going to do tomorrow? I'm going to go to the beach. All right, what do you do the day after? Or eventually you get bored of hanging out the Four Seasons or buying a new car. So you got to find stuff that you're sort of fired up about. So I would say that the greatest thing in life is if you find things that you like and that you're passionate about, just to feed it. Because whatever you like, it's irrational, it's stupid, right? If you like golf or basketball, it's just stupid, right? It's just a game, right? But you like it, so feed it. I love watching young people succeed in life. I just love watching them. My dad lost his job a lot when I was growing up, so I'm sure it comes from I always knew that I was a loser and that I was not that smart and that that was going to be hard to succeed. And so then when I got that feeling, I just wanted to share it of what it's like to just have a little success. I just wanted to share it with other people because it's so available for all of you guys, and it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get it if you just bring the right attitude. You may not make $500 million, but you're going to have it. So I think if you just find these things you like and you're just upbeat about it and you pursue it and you're curious, I don't know, just days go by fast and things are kind of fun.
And what about the setbacks and failures? So how do you look at that? We all have those things that sort of tear at us. We lost money, or it's not even about the money actually. It's sort of how you internalize it. But how do you view sort of what's happened in the past versus sort of looking forward? It's not as easy as it seems to just say, forget about it and move on. But you've always seemed to be looking forward.
Yeah, I do. Probably too much.
Really?
I just look forward, yeah. I mean, I just, you made a bad decision. Let's say you're just sitting here saying, damn, I wish I had gone to Stanford instead of SC. Yeah, you made the decision to be here. Make the best of it. You can't turn it back. So, to me, it's just such a massive waste of time. The one thing that, again, this is a generalization, but I do really spend a lot of time with millennials. The amount of, what's the word I use? Compulsive reenactment I see among your generation is astonishing. Like just the stuff that goes through people's heads, like they just compulsively read, I should have done this, and I could have done that, and I could have done this. I'm like, what are you doing? At the end of the day, you're not taking new data when you're compulsively reenacting. You're not getting smarter, you're just torturing yourself. So I'm a big believer of just constantly trying to find new ways to get new inputs and new information so that failure can be combined with the new information that can cause something else.
Yeah, it's sort of called rumination when you keep replaying these bad things.
Yeah.
And part of the Performance Science Institute is we're going to try and get expert advice on how to break that cycle, because sometimes it is a cycle.
Helped me, and it's between 2 and 4 in the morning it happens the most. Yeah, but yeah, I'd really try hard to reduce that.
Yeah, we're going to open up for questions in a second. But the last thing I want to talk about before we open it up is what are you doing in Kenya?
Oh yeah, so here's an example of not planning on starting a business, but it's just sort of kind of a cool thing. So my partner and I started a foundation called Give Power. And so what we do is, I thought it would be cool to take our best employees at Cypress and send 20 or 30 of them on treks to Kenya, Nepal, Nicaragua as part of their bonus and build microgrids. Because I really think it's important that if you want to get in renewable energy or a change the world business, that you actually feel and touch a little bit of it. And so for me as a business, this is really cool. So the nonprofit puts these treks together. We send our employees. And so, okay, that's great. So we started doing it for some other companies. And then a couple of the heirs to the Walton family, who inherited billions of dollars, want to do good for the world. And so my partner met them. And they said, hey, what can we do to help? And so because I was at Solar City and Tesla, we have some really cool technology, solar panels and batteries that can energize desalination machines. So a desalination machine is something that take ocean water or brackish water, make it clean and consumable. And so they said, hey man, we really want to help. My other friend knew somebody who was at a big reservation in Kenya. And so those guys gave us $1 million to put 2 big desalination plants in Kenya, which we just put in the first one last week. And so what's cool about it is now I get to see, do they work? How often do the parts break? It's supposed to work for 10 years, but we all know nothing ever goes. And then what happens if it does break? And so we're just going to build that up in Kenya. But the reason I was talking to Cindy Crawford is I started researching, and if you're in an island anywhere in the world in a resort, your cost of water is really high. Well, I just all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, these machines cost X. I can sell the water for Y. I can pay back the cost of the machine in 6 months. And so what I'm planning on doing is taking these machines and rolling them out in as many island resorts in the world as I can. And every time we build one in a resort, we'll build more for Africa to finance the business. So I didn't have any intention to build a business, and we took a nonprofit donation. But as it sort of come in, those guys were like, hey, cool, awesome, and we're happy to invest in the new business. And so I think that's got a shot to be something significant. Don't know yet, but it's something we're working on right now.
You learn something each time, and we talk a lot, but that was the first time I heard about this, and it's just it's fast. It's one of my favorite parts of the world to be there. So if you ever need anyone,
we need distributors, man.
Happy to go to Africa. I've been there many times. Let's open up for questions for Ben. Don't be shy. This is not a shy class.
Where's my water?
Hi, thank you so much for coming right here.
Oh, there you go, hi.
I want to know, when did you acquire your entrepreneurial mindset? Is it something that you always had, or was it a time that it just hit you? Because you stand up there and you talk so well, your business mindset is so strong, and I want to be like that. So I just want to know, when did that happen, or were you always like that?
No, it was not always like that. I definitely think being in debt and watching my dad lose his job, when he didn't think he would, I thought that was security. So I think wanting to create financial security was part of it. And so I think, starting off looking at various things. My father-in-law and Tony Robbins had the two best insights for me about this stuff, which is, it's this, you don't have to be incredibly, like, has Gary Vaynerchuk come and spoke here?
This year,
So he's had some people that are like true, like, so here's, I think this is true. I mean, you always gotta be careful when people say that, but I think we're all on a spectrum. There's a great book called Quiet. Like, we're all various versions of extroverts and introverts. I think we're all various forms of risk takers and not, and we're all forms of just pure, raw, passionate entrepreneurs and people who should take a job like at an accounting firm, because we just don't want to take any risk. Like, you know, you don't want an entrepreneur in your accounting department, right? You know, you want someone who really loves certainty. And so we all fall on that spectrum. So I think the most important thing is to sort of have experiences in your life so you can figure out where you fall on that spectrum. Like, I wanted to be here on the extreme, but I was a little bit further when I was younger. I wasn't quite there. You know, I wanted to be that. That's why I wanted to identify myself, but I really wasn't. So I didn't take the full risks. I didn't quit college like Bill Gates or, you know, some of these other people. And so I kept my job while I looked for entrepreneurial opportunities. And so that's because that's sort of where I fell on the spectrum. And so I just was always looking for, like, I'd go skiing with my then girlfriend and wife, and it'd be like a long line. I would, like, why would if you had a ski shop, would you have this line? Everyone knows they're coming to rent skis. They could call ahead. You could triple the amount of money, you know. And then I'd sit there and go, who cares, right? No, that idea is not going to make me any money. No one cares. No one wants to hear from me anyway. But I was always thinking at that stage, like, how can I improve things and make some money to pay back this college debt? So I think it started there. And then I think what also happens is you forget how much you're going to evolve. Like, how old are you, if it's okay?
24.
24. So the difference between you now and the age of 10, right? You know a lot more now than you did at 10, is the difference between you now and 38. In fact, I would maintain that you're going to know more at 38. The difference between 38 and 24 is bigger than 24 and 10. So you can look back and say, holy mackerel, have I grown? Boy, have I learned. It's really hard to project forward. But I think if you just develop good habits, you know, and I really think, and I don't know if Dave's talked about this new peak performance center, is that something that people know that you're doing? I mean, it's really cool. I think if you embrace some of these traits that I think you'll see successful people, that's the best thing about this guy. You're going to meet, I mean, is anyone more disciplined than Kobe Bryant? You know, is anybody, you know, I mean, like, some people do it through bro, but everyone does it a different way. I promise you, you've got some cool superpowers in you. And if you just figure out how to identify them, feed them, do it in a healthy, rational way, the success may not come tomorrow, it may not come next year, but it's guaranteed to come. It's just a matter of when, if you have the discipline to keep at it. And it's just hard for people to see it because you're so young, you know, and then you're so inundated with social media, people your own age who've already made it, and then that makes you feel like a loser, and then you compulsively reenact, and then just get, you know, then you start drinking too much, and it's just that, you know, so, but I think it's just a matter of, I love you guys being this proximity with SC. If there's a way that you guys can get internships with a startup and an older, more stodgy firm, if you can just sort of audit yourself and see where you fall on that spectrum, and then feed who you are with the things that are they're known. I mean, they have them. They're locked up in this new minor that Dave is teaching. I mean, it's knowable. I don't know. It's like, it's kind of really hard to see. I mean, you can get unlucky, but it's hard to see things going poorly.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
And you know, you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk, whom you also introduced us to, and you know, talking about auditing yourself and self-awareness and figuring out where you are. Well, you don't have to be the one with the idea. You don't have to be the one that's crazy number one entrepreneur. You can be a 2, 3, or 4. You look at Ben's career. At Guffey Ranker, it wasn't his original idea. He wasn't the founder. He built it and executed it and grew it, but he wasn't the number one. Now at Cypress Creek, it was his vision and his idea. So you perform different roles. And so, like you said, really know who you are and what you bring.
All right, who's next? Here we go.
Again, thank you for coming here tonight. I wanted to ask, when you pursue a new business, how do you reduce your downside risk?
It's a great question. I think you have to be unbelievably and mercilessly honest with yourself. A lot of inventors and creators love spending time alone, you know, basically massaging their idea with a diaper. And I think Peter Thiel and a lot of people, who would say the best way to mitigate your downside is to put it in the market as quickly as possible. To really get honest feedback. Like if you find yourself having to explain something for a long period of time, and you're people who really like you're going, yeah, that sounds really cool. You probably got a loser on your hand, right? But if you've got something and people go, oh wow, that's cool. Yeah, I get it. So I think it's being brutal on yourself. And as quickly as you can. Now it's hard because sometimes in technology, you have this proprietary technology you need to develop and patent, and that's just not who I am, so I wouldn't include that in that. But for me, it's been, okay, being really curious about things and then testing things out in small groups as rapidly as I can. And then just seeing, hey, okay, people seem to like that, they hated that, I'll do more of that, and then can I scale it? And I maybe not a good idea. I didn't slow myself down to go talk to patent lawyers and protect myself. Proactive wasn't even patented. Our theory was, well, we could patent it, we have to slow everything down. Let's go win the market, get market share, and so that's affected my thinking, maybe not wisely, but that's my bias.
Right. Thank you.
I have no free will. Here you go. I know this guy.
Between both your energy companies and what you're doing in Kenya and your family, how have you been able to manage your time between all these? Because obviously all four demand a lot of time.
That's really good. One of the things I disliked most when I was the CEO of Guffey Ranker was meeting people who seemed like masters of the universe. I'd meet a guy'd be super fit. Yeah, I ran a triathlon. Wife loves me. Kids were really close, and I'm like, wow, I got my work and my family and nothing else. So I'm still overweight, but I've lost 25 pounds since my last gig. I just sort of, I want to stay, I've been married almost 30 years, so I want to be married and have a relationship with my kids, and I wanted to have a great business, and that's all I did. And anything else I could do was awesome, I'd love it, but that was it. Those are the only two priorities. And so sometimes you meet people who work at these hedge funds. A lot of times now in your 50s, there's a lot of guys who've made a lot of money, and women, but more of my friends that confide in me are usually guys, are on their third or fourth wife, but they're loaded. Or you have somebody who's in their 50s who's happily married, says, gosh, I wish I'd made more money. And the way I look at it is, if you want to have a great life, great marriage, great kids, you're a pretty ambitious person. If you want to just make money, yeah, great. Don't worry about relationships, don't worry about children. Just want to make money, you probably increase your chances of making money, and you probably increase your chance of being miserable. And if you want to, so I just think trying to be reasonably well-rounded is hard. And all I could figure out how to do is make money, have a good career, try to prevent my wife from wanting to leave me. Now, and Dave helped by saying teach a class with her, that she has to spend more time with me. And everything else was just not irrelevant, but I definitely didn't keep up with as many relationships as I would have liked to. I do now, but when I was a CEO, I got up at 5:30 in the morning. I worked until 6:45. We were in about 60 countries. Then I do the breakfast carpool thing. You go to work. I would do the dinner family thing, then the kids were younger, and then I would go work again. And that sucked. But it was, but it's not bad. You got to do it. It's like grad school. It's there's phases in your life when you got to work hard. So I did that for a while. And then this phase is a lot more fun. And I got other people doing that. Yeah.
Let's take it. Yeah, kind of building off of managing your time. I was really interested when you were talking about devouring information about solar energy, and you just identifying that was a field that needed to be innovated more. And I was just curious what your process was for that and how you balanced seeking out information about solar energy with the rest of your life.
Yeah, so that became sort of my passion, my hobby. So I would sign up for solar conferences. I would just go online and just look up how does solar work? I didn't know it was electrons and transmission. And I would talk to architects who would put solar on the roof. I would go down to the Lexus dealer because for a while there was solar panels on some cars. And so for me it was not ever being embarrassed at admitting how stupid I was and just endlessly asking questions. And it's interesting, like people are really nice about sharing their wisdom and their brilliance and their insights. And so I had some competitive, I had a research team at Guffey Ranker that could show me that, people, younger people viewed this as a value, but also could send them off to do other research for me. So, so I just took it from everywhere I could get it. And it's like you're doing research and then all of a sudden, like the same things start coming up. I mean, you kind of get a sense, okay, I kind of understand it a little bit now. Like in law, like we'd look for cases. And then when you start seeing the same cases over and over again, you're like, okay, I kind of get it now. So I think it was a little bit of that. But for me, it's just endless curiosity. And I just put it out early on that, look, I'm not that smart, I'm kind of insecure. I'm going to ask you some stupid questions. You may not be impressed, but would you mind just sharing a bunch of stuff? So I'm just, relentless at pursuing that stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. I just had a question on the different options you're talking about, how you should have multiple options, be interested in multiple things. I was just wondering, because I'm in a couple entrepreneurial classes and we have to tackle different projects, and I myself have like a bunch of different routes that I'm interested in. I was just wondering like what your process was on like what kind of business you decided to tackle after having like so much curiosity in so many different fields.
That's great. So that was part of what we did in this class. We started with 48, companies that were all doing God's work, and we made the class choose 3. And so I think the more you know, the more it's easier to make prioritized decisions. Like what I found is that when I was at Guffey Ranker, we would greenlight maybe 10 new products a year. And if we took 30 of our best ideas, 15 of them look good. But if we got 300, only 10 look good. So I think the more you know, like one way to make sure that you really like a product or an opportunity is to know nothing about the competition. I got this great idea. It's got 2 wheels, and and if you don't know there's other bicycles out there, the description of a bicycle might sound great. So I think it's really important just to learn as much as you can of, all right, I got something. What are people's alternatives? Is it really better? Is it faster, cheaper? Is it, and so I would just try not to spend a lot of time torturing myself as to what the best idea was, and I just tried to let the information make the decision for me a little bit. And eventually, it's a great place to be, to have 3, like to pick between a Porsche, a Mercedes, and a BMW and a Tesla, pretty cool. My guess is no matter what you choose, you'll win. And so that's a good place to be. So I would just try to get to that as much as you can.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Come interact.
Thank you so much for being here. You mentioned that we stop watching TV, so I want to know what kind of techniques, tools are the best now for selling, or it would be depend on the target market.
Right. No, it's
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, it is. I got to tell you, it was really a beautiful time. So think about what we did with Proactive from 1996 to 2006. 50% of all national cable advertising went unsold. And so we bought all the unsold time. And so did our competitors. And so you get a national reach for a product from a provider that has too much inventory. Fast forward to today, that energy company, we get 90% of our sales through door-to-door marketing and referrals. It's brutal. It's a lot of employees. I do a lot of online target marketing. I own a mortgage company, that company Paramount, that was the solar company. I still have 1,000 employees in the mortgage company. We still do radio ads. Direct mail still works for us. We do, to people who haven't said, please don't, they haven't joined the do not call list. We have some of them. And referrals are the biggest part of all of those businesses. But when you're first starting, you don't have a referrals. The only reason I bring it up. But referrals is always the biggest. So like if you put solar on someone's roof, you then have a party for them, and then you invite the neighbors over to congratulate them on their great decision, and then you have someone there meeting all the various neighbors and things like that. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Social media is an effective way?
Social, yeah, it's certainly the fastest way, but for me, yeah, it was. For Guffey Ranker, it was hard to create the kind of visceral, and again, I'm 5 years out of it, so I'm not an expert in that part, but it was like we could cause people to cry when we had a young adult or a mother talking about a child with acne, and I could create a visceral reaction that would cause an action. Social media is harder to create that sort of lean forward action, so we always use social media to amplify something people already wanted. And so what we're always trying to do is like, what causes somebody to really want what you want? So with Inspire Energy, we really focused in on the name, getting those first 100,000 customers. And so we went from 0% social media and all the techniques to now it's probably 10%, and hopefully next year it goes to 25%. But we really had to start off with a focus of getting people, who were real, Luddites and passionate about changing the world.
So throughout your career, you seem to always find the right business opportunities or seek out the right opportunities. So I was just wondering, what was your process of finding these opportunities or evaluating their, if they're worth investing in or not?
So for me, I'll give you an example of one of the things that I've done. We have about 10 really entrepreneurial people at Cypress. So let's say 600 employees, and my fear is losing them. Because I can tell they look like me, and I can tell they're looking around and going, I want to make more money, I want to be more entrepreneurial. And so what I've done is I've gone to them and said, hey, let's create a Skunk Works. And what I want you to do is find products that we as a company would want to buy that make us better. And I want you to own it, and you can become the vendor and client. So I guess my point is, for what I always did is, whatever I was working on, I would try to find all the things congruent to it, because at least I would understand it. And so for me, it was just devouring information about things that I was related to. So when we were land use lawyers, it was, oh wow, there's an opportunity with this building permit. At Guffey Ranker, we were constantly looking for new products, so that sort of broadened my scope. And now I'm looking for anything that's clean energy related. So now one of the products I'm looking at now is it's a technology that allows existing solar panels to emit 20% more energy. And that's a technology that came from some of our employees. And so I'm like, great, let's build it out, I'll finance it, and if it goes really well, you can quit. We'll be your biggest client. We'd like to own part of the business, and on and on. So I would say, stick to things you kind of know. If you don't know anything about it, you might be great at it, but it's less likely, than if it's something that you know something about, and then you start building up competitive advantages from your knowledge and your energy and your passion.
Hi, so one thing you mentioned that I really liked was that every single person has a superpower, and you mentioned that your business tactic is recognizing these superheroes in an industry or identifying those superpowers. So my question is, what kind of superpowers have you seen in people that made you want to wholeheartedly invest in them?
That's a great question. Honestly, an ironic twist is that a disproportionate number of the people that are owners and my partners have had terrible relationships with their mother or father, either abandonment issues or other, and they're trying to fill a hole, which I think is really interesting. And so I didn't know that when I met them, but what I saw in them was this endless energy to fill a need that may not be entirely rational. So for me, a superpower would be, you meet people who you just go, man, this person wants it so badly, there's just no way they're not going to succeed. May not be on the opportunity they've given you. A lot of times someone will come to me and pitch me on something, and I'll say, I hate that idea, but I love you. I mean, if I could buy 20% of your future earnings, I'm in, but I don't like this idea. So I would say a lot of it is just how wired is somebody to be resilient, to just fight through all the inevitable failure that occurs. That's a big one that we look at. And I would look at that as like a flywheel with what is the business opportunity, and is that person sort of uniquely qualified or appropriately qualified? That business model with that passion, does that peanut butter and chocolate look like it's going to make something awesome? So I think that's, but it's a lot of, I would say that's probably the major lens I look at.
Hi. So actually my question was more about Inspire Energy. What do you think was the greatest challenge in disrupting a standard, boring business like the energy sector? So.
Yeah, they have unbelievable advantages, and so the biggest challenge was, at the end of the day, people really don't care that much about their energy bill. and that if we're not lowering their price, so we had to capture their heart and mind and say, hey, don't be a jerk, and it's a hard message to send. And the person who runs and created that business fits the exact profile I just described to you. And we just went out and said, all right, I had a friend who owned a sales force of buyers, so let's just try it. We're not going to discount. We're just going to go out there and just inspire people to do the right thing. And we started in Pennsylvania, and so I think the disruption is starting to occur. Now the major disruption is occurring because at Cypress, we can now build utility scale solar for a price cheaper than you can create coal energy. So I think it's a whole series of utilities are becoming more open to the idea that it's not all just coal, nuclear, wind and geothermal and solar have a place, natural gas, and I think people's mindsets are changing. Like, all right, well, it's not that big a deal, right? If I'm going to have energy in my house, it's almost like feng shui, all right, well, same price. And so, but it's bit by bit. It took us 4 years to get to 100,000 customers, but it definitely gets easier every year, which is kind of cool. Which is why you need somebody who's resilient. Doesn't necessarily have to have a bad relationship with a parent. In this case, that helped, because this guy has a hole to fill that's just won't stop until he changes the world and has $1 billion and creates a big green utility.
All right, couple more.
Hi. Thanks for coming in again. So I wanted to ask you, when an individual identifies his or her own superpower, should it be just because they can do it, or should it be because they want to make it big in the financial sector? So what I'm trying to ask is, like, should it be just like, oh, I need a job, I want a high-paying job, so I should just do it, or should you do it because you have a natural urge?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of ways you can go. So let's say you're 22, 23, graduating from SC. I honestly don't think you can go wrong. If you take a high-paying job, you might end up liking it. You might end up learning skills. You might end up develop a lot of training. But you might only like it for 1.5 years. If you end up doing something that you're really passionate about, you want to change the world, you want to work at Peace Corps, you're helping people, you might really like it. But after 1.5 years, urinating outside might get old to you. But you don't know until you audit yourself. So I honestly think you guys can't go wrong as long as you don't allow inertia to take over. Once that compulsive reenactment comes in and you start saying, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that, get your options. Big company, little company, more pay, less pay, and then figure it out. Choose one, and then don't get wedded to it. And then every day you're at your job, be great at it until the day you quit. Right? If you're going to quit at 5 o'clock, I'd love it when people are sprinting at 4:30 instead of like moaning and groaning 6 months in advance. You know what I mean? Like, suck all the marrow out of the financial company or the startup or whatever. And you're gonna, it's for sure. I mean, it's not a maybe. If you do that, I promise you, these guys will have stats in this success institute that they're building. You will continue to just keep growing. So I think the answer is it doesn't matter. I mean, if you've got a high-paying job, great. You might have some big debts. You might have a relationship where having some money is good, but it might be the other way around. But ultimately, I think you want to get to the place for me, is where if you can do good and do well, make money, feel good about yourself, be passionate about it, that's kind of neat. I mean, that's a nice place. I mean, and to me, that's what I was always working toward. And by the way, I was miserable for a lot of my career, traveling and doing things, being away from my family. But it all led to something that was pretty awesome, and I'm glad I didn't let my self-pity get in the way of trying to continue to develop.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I was just curious, what habits did you form when you were younger that led to long-term success for you?
So Dave, when he usually brings out here, he tries to get all of you to cry and things like that. So when I was 11 years old, I developed a learning disability and some physical disabilities. And my parents did me a huge favor and moved 3,000 miles away. And so I gained 40 pounds. And so I went through high school with no friends, never went to a prom, never went to a date, on a date or anything like that. And I grew up before that in the Middle East, and so I graduated 2 years early. So high school just sucked beyond belief for me. So when you talk about setbacks turning into opportunities, so most guys, my wife who's Jewish is allowed to say this, she says I'm a 5'1" neurotic Jewish man trapped in someone else's body. And so what I was able to do from that setback was observe everyone in high school. And by the way, high school people kind of suck. I mean, there's a lot of meanness. I was kind of surprised. But I just got to watch all the dynamics and observe. And to me, what I ultimately realized is that most people are pretty good people, and that most people are just trying to find security and safety. And that if I can find ways to make their life a little better and make them feel a little safer, they might make me. So I probably started with a bit of a dysfunction, like, hey, I'm insecure and I don't have friends, I want to make friends. But I ultimately moved that into a business point. Like as part of going to Guffey Ranker saying I was work for free, the part we didn't talk about is I worked for them for free for 8 months before we made that deal. Because I really wanted to prove to them that I was good and that I would bring value. So I'm constantly, so when Dave starts a business, I'd love to be on his board. But what if Harrison is a better board member than me? It would suck if he had me join the board if someone was better. So I would just say, look, let me help you. And if I'm the right guy to help you, I'll help you no matter what. You don't need to give me a board seat for it. I just think that attitude, there's a book called Persuasion, Cialdini, do you guys ever, it really influenced me a lot. And the basic rule of thumb is that good people reciprocate. So if I do you a favor, you're probably gonna wanna give me a favor back. And I'm not doing it because I want something back, but most people will wanna reciprocate. So when I did Steve Ballmer a favor, man, that guy, and by the way, he's got some serious resources, he wanted to help me out and do me lots of favors. So my view is if you do favors for Elon Musk and Steve Ballmer, you'll get rich. If you do favors for people who can do nothing for you, you go to heaven. And just find a good blend.
Okay, first, thank you for coming here. And then I had a question for you in regards to your business in Nest. I wanted to know, you mentioned that you buy single families. My first question was, why single families? Because apartment buildings could be more cost effective from a price per unit standpoint. And the other question would be, are these in metropolitan areas? Because, for example, cost of housing in Los Angeles is very high, and would the rents justify it?
Right.
And the other one would be, if you are trying to target, higher income families, that have some sort of a luxury attached to it, or are you looking for people, that their Medi-Cal is paying for the rent?
No, it's a great question. So on Nested, we're operating in Pennsylvania. I talked to a lot of the caregivers here to learn about it. We operate in Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Indiana. The typical home is about $200,000 to $230,000. It's typically about a 3-bedroom. The public policy in most of these states is we want to integrate these young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities into the mainstream. There's a little bit more competition on the apartment side that I cared to choose from. And the little twist about the business that I like a lot is I never want to foreclose on these people. And so I'm only operating in jurisdictions that when the tenant defaults, the state steps in and covers the rent. And so that narrows down the jurisdictions that I can operate in. So I'm operating in 3 states that I can cover about 70% of them. So I have a little research team figuring out other states that I can operate in. But typically the model works best between $200,000 and $400,000. My best friend in the world is a billionaire, and his youngest son has this issue. And so he would like to invest a lot in the business. I know a number of people my age who've become very successful. So when you're talking about dealing with higher income people, what I've done is I've gone to a big group of those people facing this issue saying, look, if you want to change the world as it relates to your kids with developmental disabilities, I'll work with you on it, because I'd like to ultimately create farm to table and jobs and other kinds of opportunity. But I'm only willing to do it if you're willing to get your money back at an interest level. I'm not willing to take your philanthropy. But I haven't earned the right to take your money yet. So what I'm trying to do is get up to 1,000 single family homes, really make sure I understand the market well enough, and then we want to evolve into creating job related activities. But your point is really well taken. So what I did is there are better opportunities, just not better opportunities for me. So I'm operating in this sort of niche, trying to cover and capture that. Yeah, that's really good.
That was really I want to get them out and get you out at a reasonable time. It's the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, man. It's really wild to watch you. And it's true, because there was like 15 years where you and I sort of lost track while you were at Guffey Ranker. Every 6 months I would come over there to Santa Monica, bug you, we'd grab lunch, and then you go on and do your thing. So there is a big difference in the last 5 years of like your availability and present.
Called me yesterday. Hey, I'm wide open.
It was Monday. I texted you on Monday, but I always know it comes through because he's local as long as he's here. But just so every time you speak, I learn something. You know, sort of, even though I'm a couple years younger than you, I learn each time. And so he's been a great mentor to me and advisor to us, and just done so much at USC. So even though Ben's seen behind the curtain before, he actually calls this my parlor trick of sort of what you've learned today.
Very sweet.
And that's all disclosure. They haven't been briefed on it. They don't know
Okay,
what's
all right,
coming.
all right.
Well, let's just see. What are you going to remember 5 years from now from Ben's talk? And I could probably go on for half an hour myself. So what lessons and advice will you remember from today? Hands. Ready? I'm going to go over here first. Go.
Finding your competitive advantage.
Go.
Don't spend most of your time massaging your idea with a diaper.
That's so wrong. Go ahead.
Spend your time doing favors for others. Find areas where you are passionate about and can create value.
Audit yourself and feed your drive.
Audit yourself. Yep.
Be interested in everything.
Curious. Go.
Do good and do well.
We all have a superpower.
Do favors for other people.
Do favors. This side, you're on my list. Go ahead.
Be humble enough to learn.
Life is about meaningful relationships and meaningful work.
Good. Up here.
Don't compulsively reenact events.
Don't edit your options until it's a deal.
Great.
Reaction limits your growth.
Don't make decisions before limiting opportunities.
Oh.
Never be embarrassed about how stupid you are.
Always keep looking forward.
Speak up.
Always keep looking forward.
Great.
Find the things you like in life and feed them. Make people want to see you win. Find other people's superpower. Success is your willingness to keep going.
Observe your surroundings. Business can be one of the greatest forces for good.
Excellent.
If you like something, feed it.
If you like something, feed it. All right. In here.
Growth comes from learning from life's hardship.
Stick to things you already know.
The way you say yes is just as important as saying it.
Excellent. That's a good one. Any more? Did I miss anybody? Let's thank Ben Vandebunt.
Thank you very much.